The sound of glass shattering echoed through the office as Mark collapsed to his knees, surrounded by the remains of the CEO's prized Crystal Award. Tears streamed down his face as he looked up at his boss, his voice breaking. "I can't do this anymore. My daughter needs me." No one expected what happened next, least of all Mark. If you want to find out how this desperate father's breaking point changed not just his life, but an entire company's culture, stay with me until the end. And if this story touches your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity. 20 minutes earlier, Mark Jenkins had been sitting at his desk, staring at his phone. 3 missed calls from Lily's school. His 8-year-old daughter was sick again, the 3rd time this month, and needed to be picked up immediately. He glanced at the clock, 2:15 p.m. The quarterly presentation to the board was at 3 o'clock, and as senior project manager, his presence wasn't just expected, it was required. Mark's fingers trembled as he dialed his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who sometimes watched Lily in emergencies. No answer. He tried his sister in the next county. Voicemail. His ex-wife had made it clear 2 years ago that her new life in California didn't include room for the daughter she'd left behind. There was no one else to call. The weight of single parenthood had never felt heavier than in this moment. For 2 years, Mark had been performing an impossible balancing act, being both mother and father to Lily while climbing the corporate ladder at Westfield Technologies. He'd missed recitals for conference calls, stayed up until 2 a.m. finishing reports after tucking Lily in, and mastered the art of hiding his exhaustion behind a professional smile. Jenkins. The sharp voice of his boss, Richard Westfield, cut through his thoughts. The board is expecting those third-quarter projections. Tell me you're ready. Richard Westfield was a legend in the tech industry, brilliant, demanding, and utterly uncompromising. At 45, he had built Westfield Technologies from a garage startup to a Fortune 500 company through sheer force of will and an unwavering commitment to excellence. His employees both feared and admired him, but mostly feared him. He had no patience for excuses and even less for personal problems that interfered with work. I'm ready, sir," Mark stammered, his phone still clutched in his hand. "But my daughter. Is this about your kid again?" Richard's expression hardened. "Jenkins, I've been more than patient. But this presentation is make or break for our Asian expansion. The board doesn't care about your personal problems, and neither can I." Mark felt something inside him crack. 2 years of stretching himself to the breaking point, of apologizing to Lily for missing her school play, of apologizing to Richard for leaving early to take her to the doctor, of apologizing to everyone for never being enough. "I need to go get my daughter," Mark said, his voice steadier than he expected. Richard's eyes narrowed. "If you walk out that door now, don't bother coming back." The office had gone silent. Dozens of employees pretended to work while watching the confrontation unfold. Mark stood, gathering his courage along with his jacket. "Then I guess I won't be coming back." He turned to leave, but Richard stepped into his path. On the credenza behind his boss sat the Crystal Award Richard had received for CEO of the Year, his most prized possession, often pointed out to visitors. "You're throwing away your career," Richard hissed. "Over what? A runny nose? Hire a nanny like everyone else." Something in Mark snapped. "A nanny? On my salary? While you cut our benefits and deny remote work requests? My daughter has been running a fever of 103 for 3 days. She needs her father, not a stranger." He tried to step around Richard, but in his emotional state, he misjudged the distance. His elbow caught the edge of the credenza, sending the heavy Crystal Award crashing to the floor. The sound of shattering glass seemed to freeze time itself. Mark dropped to his knees, instinctively trying to gather the pieces. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." That's when the words escaped him, raw and honest. "I can't do this anymore. My daughter needs me." He expected rage. Termination. Perhaps even security escorting him from the building. What he didn't expect was the strange expression that crossed Richard Westfield's face, something between shock and recognition, as if he were seeing Mark for the first time. Richard stood motionless, staring not at the shattered award but at the broken man before him. The office remained deathly quiet, everyone holding their breath. Then Richard did something no one had ever seen him do in the company's 15-year history. He knelt down beside Mark. "Go get your daughter," he said quietly. "We'll figure out the rest later." Mark looked up, confused. "But the presentation?" "I'll handle it." Richard's voice had lost its edge. "Go." As Mark hurried out of the building, he couldn't make sense of what had just happened. Had he just ended his career? Would there be a termination notice waiting for him tomorrow? All he knew was that right now, Lily needed him, and for once, he was putting her first without reservation. At the elementary school, he found Lily curled up on a cot in the nurse's office, her face flushed with fever. When she saw him, her eyes lit up despite her illness. "Daddy! You came!" The surprise in her voice cut him to the core. Had she expected him not to come? Had he failed her so many times that his presence was now a pleasant surprise rather than a certainty? "Of course I came, sweetheart," he whispered, gathering her into his arms. "I'll always come for you." That night, after giving Lily her medicine and tucking her into bed, Mark sat at his kitchen table updating his resume. His phone had been silent all evening, no angry calls from Richard, no emails from HR. Just the quiet ticking of the clock and the occasional soft cough from Lily's room. At 9:37 p.m., his phone finally buzzed. A text from Richard Westfield himself, "My office. 10 a.m. tomorrow." Mark's stomach clenched. So this was it, the formal termination. At least he'd have the weekend to start job hunting before the bills came due. The next morning, after dropping a much-improved Lily at Mrs. Patterson's, Mark drove to the office for what he assumed would be the last time. The receptionist gave him a strange look as he passed. Was it pity? He couldn't tell. Richard was waiting in his office, standing by the window overlooking the city. The broken award had been cleared away, leaving an empty space on the credenza. "Sit down, Jenkins," Richard said without turning around. Mark sat, bracing himself for the inevitable. "How's your daughter?" The question caught him off guard. "She's better. The fever broke last night." Richard nodded, finally turning to face him. "Good. That's good." He took his own seat, studying Mark with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Do you know why I built this company, Jenkins?" Mark blinked, confused by the unexpected direction. "To revolutionize enterprise software solutions?" A faint smile crossed Richard's face. "That's the what, not the why." He leaned back in his chair. "I built this company because 20 years ago, my wife died giving birth to our son. I wanted to create something that would provide for him, something that would make him proud." Mark sat in stunned silence. In 5 years at Westfield Technologies, he'd never heard Richard mention a family. "My son is in college now," Richard continued. "And do you know what he told me when he came home for Christmas last year? He told me he barely knows me. That I was always too busy building this company to be his father." Richard's gaze drifted to the empty space where his award had been. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. About your daughter needing her father, not a stranger." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, about the award, I'm truly sorry." Richard waved his hand dismissively. "It's just glass. Replaceable." He leaned forward. "What's not replaceable is the time with your daughter. I learned that lesson too late." He pushed a folder across the desk. Mark opened it cautiously, expecting termination papers. Instead, he found a new contract. "What is this?" "A promotion," Richard said simply. "Senior Director of Project Management." Flexible hours, option to work remotely 3 days a week, and a 20% salary increase. Mark stared at the contract in disbelief. I don't understand. Yesterday made me realize something, Jenkins. We've been doing this all wrong. Pushing people to choose between being good parents and good employees doesn't make them more productive, it breaks them. And broken people can't do their best work. Richard stood, walking to the window again. I'm instituting new policies company-wide. Flexible scheduling. Remote work options. An on-site childcare facility. And I want you to help me implement them. Me? Why? Richard turned, his expression more human than Mark had ever seen it. Because you had the courage to put your daughter first, even when it cost you everything. That's the kind of integrity I want in my leadership team. Mark felt tears threatening again, but for an entirely different reason. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me build a company where no parent has to make the choice you faced yesterday. 6 months later, Westfield Technologies was featured in Business Week as one of the most family-friendly employers in the country. Productivity had increased by 23%. Employee turnover had dropped to an all-time low. And applications had tripled. Mark sat in his new office, looking at the framed picture on his desk, Lily at her school play, beaming as he applauded from the front row. For the first time in years, he wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. And so was she. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard, board meeting in 10. Bringing my son to Shadow today. Thought you might want to bring Lily for the company picnic planning committee after. Mark smiled, typing back a quick, "We'll be there." As he gathered his notes for the meeting, he thought about the moment that had changed everything, that moment of complete honesty when he'd admitted he couldn't do it anymore. Not alone. Not the way things were. Sometimes breaking points aren't endings. Sometimes they're beginnings. In the conference room, Richard was introducing his son to the board members. The young man looked so much like his father, but his eyes were kinder, less haunted. When Richard caught Mark's eye across the room, there was an understanding between them, the understanding of fathers who had nearly lost what mattered most. That evening, as Mark pushed Lily on the swing in their backyard, she asked a question that stopped his heart. "Daddy, are you happy now?" He paused, realizing she'd noticed his struggle all along. Children always did. "Yes, sweetheart," he answered truthfully. "I'm very happy now." She pumped her legs, swinging higher. "Me too. I like it when you're home more. And I like Mr. Richard. He looks scary but he's actually nice." Mark laughed. "Yes, he is. And you know what? He taught me something important." "What?" "That sometimes the strongest thing you can say is, 'I can't do this,' because that's when people who care will help you find a way that you can." Lily considered this with the solemn wisdom of childhood. "Like when I couldn't tie my shoes, and you showed me the bunny ear trick?" Exactly like that. As the sun set over their small backyard, Mark thought about all the parents out there still struggling, still trying to do it all alone. He hoped they would find the courage to speak their truth before breaking. And he hoped there would be someone there to listen, really listen, when they did. Because no one should have to choose between being a good parent and making a living. No one should have to do it all alone. And sometimes, the most unexpected people understand that truth when we're brave enough to speak it. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with someone who might be struggling to balance work and family, or with an employer who has the power to make a difference. Because sometimes, the stories we tell can change more than just our perspective, they can change lives.